It is Monday, January 26, 2026. Today, we're focusing on a single point on the map that seems to be, well, bending the entire political reality of the region,
The Rafah crossing.
the Rafah crossing. We're working off a report from Al Jazeera that highlights this massive contradiction between what was signed on paper and what is actually happening on the ground.
It really is. It's a classic case of political maneuvering. You have the Israeli government currently marketing the potential opening of Rafah as a specific high-value concession to the Trump administration.
Right. They're framing it like it's a diplomatic favor,
Exactly.
which is just
Not
it's
good.
bizarre, because if you look at the text of the original Gaza ceasefire agreement, the one that's already in effect, opening that crossing wasn't a maybe.
It was a requirement. That is the core insight here. The source makes it crystal clear. The crossing was required to be open, and crucially, it was never legally tied to the return of all captives.
So we're watching a mandatory action from a past agreement being repackaged.
Being repackaged as a fresh, optional political gesture.
It's like paying a bill you already owe, but wrapping it in a bow and calling it a birthday present. But despite that creative accounting, the reality on the ground is that the crossing remains effectively shut. The report says Israel has put its foot down.
And they are leaning on specific security conditions to justify it. The source mentions a development regarding the, quote, possible location of the last body identified.
And you would think that might change the calculus a bit.
But it hasn't. Israel is holding the line.
And that line is strict. I mean, we aren't just talking about unlocking a gate.
Oh, not at all. This is about control. The stipulation is that nobody moves in or out of Gaza without pre-screening by Israeli authorities. So even if the crossing is technically open,
It's just a bottleneck.
it turns the crossing into a bottleneck rather than a bridge.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, you have the whole humanitarian element. American officials have visited, and according to the source, they've been applying significant pressure to get aid moving. But pressure doesn't equal motion. The report is blunt about it. It says that diplomatic pressure hasn't yielded results yet. The trucks aren't moving just because a diplomat showed up.
And that failure to launch is actually what sets up the political play we mentioned at the top.
The Trump factor.
Yeah. The source suggests the administration needs a win.
And if the aid flows simply because of the ceasefire agreement, well, that's just procedural. It's not a win. But if the aid flows because the U.S. president asked for it as a favor,
Suddenly, it's a diplomatic victory.
it's a headline.
So the strategy is to withhold compliance with the ceasefire
Right.
so that it can be sold later as a concession to the U.S.
That's the transaction. It transforms a humanitarian necessity into political currency. It gives the U.S. administration a win, and in exchange, Israel gets to set those strict pre-screening terms we discussed as the price for doing them the favor.
It turns a binary obligation, yes or no, into a negotiation.
And it buys them time.
So to recap the situation on this Monday the 26th, the Rafah crossing, which should be open by law.
Is closed by choice.
Right. Israel is demanding strict pre-screening, effectively rewriting the terms of access. And the Trump administration is looking to claim the eventual opening as a diplomatic success.
Even though it was supposed to happen anyway, it's a sobering look at how international agreements function in practice.
It certainly makes you question the value of the paper these deals are written on.
And that's the big takeaway I want you to sit with. If a term that was already agreed upon in a ceasefire can be retroactively reframed as a new political concession for a third party, what does that tell us about the future?
That's what the precedent.
Exactly. If the ink on the paper can be renegotiated as a favor months later, is any agreement in this region actually binding? Or is it all just, the starting point for the next negotiation?
A heavy question for a Monday. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.